Welcome back to the Snow Point Cast. Today we're going to be going over a deck from 2012 called CMT. So CMT actually got top 8 in the Masters division at the World Championships. It was a little bit more techy, it ran an Espeon, and that Eviolite made it a little less consistent. So this particular list isn't that list. It's a list that aims to be a little bit more consistent instead, just kind of work with the deck's goal instead of be a little more techy. But let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Celebi. Celebi is going to be the main engine of the deck. It's got 60 HP. You're going to be playing 4 of this guy because it's your optimal starter. You really want to start Celebi. 60 HP, Single Retreat, which is actually really nice for Skyarrow Bridge, but we'll get into that in a sec. Weakness to Fire, and then Forest Breath, which is the Poke Power. So Forest Breath says, once during your turn, before you attack, if Celebi is your active Pokemon, you may attach a grass energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So just being able to accelerate grass is so good in a Mewtwo deck. It just helps you keep up with Mewtwo Wars. That's one of this deck's main strengths, is you're able to attack with Mewtwo's really consistently and powerfully and just return KOs a lot because of that built-in energy accelerant. You don't need to have that DCE. You can just have basic attach, Forest Breath plus power, and then you get that Mewtwo knockout. So Celebi is a great card and a really powerful engine for this deck. So just playing 3 Mewtwo EX. So Mewtwo EX is the M in CMT. It's 170 HP, Psychic type, 2 Retreat, Weakness to Psychic, and then X-Ball is the main attack they're going to be using here, or rather the only attack you can use. So for 2 colors, it does 20 times the amount of energy attached to both this Pokemon and the defending Pokemon. Obviously, a lot of basic synergy there with Celebi. Accelerating energy on X-Ball is just very good. Mewtwo is a really good card. And then you play 2 Terrakion as well. So these are mainly just your Darkrai counters. Darkrai EX is one of the really powerful EX Pokemon in this format, aside from Mewtwo, that's really, really threatening. And if you don't play a counter to it, you can just get rolled. So Trackion is your answer to that. So Trackion's got 130 HP, Fighting type, which hits Darkrai for weakness. 4 Retreat is a big honking boy. And then a weakness to Grass as well. So Retaliate's the first attack. For fighting a colorless, it does 30, and then if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack during his or her last turn, this attack does 60 more damage, which is 90 times 2 on a Darkrai is a knockout. So that's the main reason you play it, is just to be able to take a knockout on Darkrai. If a Darkrai is kind of sweeping you, or if your opponent gets a really fast Darkrai and kills a Celebi, you could just get a return knockout by putting a Celebi up, using a Forest Breath on that Terrakion, and then regular attach, retreat with Skyarrow or a switch, and then you get that counter knockout. So really solid at keeping you on prize pace. For sure. And then Land Crush you can also use. So 2 fighting a colorless, it does 90. Also one-shots Darkrai. So this card is just really good at taking one-shots on Darkrai. This is the second T part of the deck, is Tornadus EX. So Tornadus EX has got 170 HP. Single Retreat, which is nice for Skyarrow Bridge, resistance to fighting, and a weakness to lightning. So Blow Through is the first attack. For 2 colors, it does 30 plus. If there is no stadium card in play, or if there's any stadium card in play, this attack does 30 more damage. If there's no stadium, it just does base 30. So the main reason you play this is just for donks. You can attack turn 1 in this format, so being able to hit for 60. In the CMT mirror, you're able to one-shot a Celebi if there's Skyarrow in play, or you're able to just one-shot a Tynamo if you have a Skyarrow in play. You could also just drop a plus power and then one-shot a Tynamo. So mainly for taking donks, but also that fighting resistance can come in some situations as well. And then Power Blast for 100. Flip a coin if tails, discard an energy attaches Pokemon. Nothing crazy, but 3 for 100 damage is decent for sure. Okay, so getting into some of the support Pokemon now. You're going to be playing 2 Smiggle. Smiggle is one of the staple support Pokemon in this format. Really, really solid. So 70 HP, Single Retreat, and a weakness to fighting. Portrait is the ability on this guy, or Poke Power rather. Once during your turn before you attack, if Smiggle is your active Pokemon, you may look at your opponent's hand. If you do, choose a supporter card you find there and use it as the effect of this power. So just being able to, switch it. You play Skyarrow Bridge and a ton of switch, so being able to move it into the active or a Celebi into the active really depends on what you have. But let's say you have a Celebi, you use the Celebi's power, and then you still miss knockout this turn, or you don't do damage yet, you may as well just chuck a Smiggle active to see if you can maybe hit something, because there's always the possibility, right? You play 3 switch, 4 junk arm. So if you hit Celebi, grass energy, switch, you can go okay, Smiggle, retreat to the Smiggle, I've used a Forest Breath on a Mewtwo, and I have an energy on a Mewtwo, and then I, portrait for a Pont or an N or whatever, draw a new hand of 6, then you hit that, then you can just go bench a Celebi, switch, Forest Breath, and then maybe attack again if you have a junk arm as well, or another switch in that hand. So it just kind of keeps you consistent, keeps you going. Portrait is just such a good ability. Tail Wrap you can also use for 20 times, flip 2 coins. This attack does 20 damage times the number of heads. You could hit 0. Really, really awful attack, but I mean, I guess in some really niche situations you might have to use it. So to play a Shaman, Shaman's just good to keep your energy mobile because you might be attacking with different things at different points in the game, right? Like if you had to put a DCE on a Tornadus EX and it got you a knockout on a Celebi at the beginning of the game, that's really worthwhile. But at the same time, you really don't want that DCE on that Tornadus later in the game. It's kind of a waste of a spot for that. So being able to Celebration Wind with Shaman is really great. It's got 70 HP, single retreat, resistance to fighting, and a weakness to fire. Celebration Wind is the Poke Power. It says once on your turn, when you put Shaman from your hand onto your bench, you may move as many energy cards as attached to your Pokemon as you like to any of your other Pokemon. So just being able to move that energy from the Tornadus, or right, if you attack with a Terrakion on a Darkrai, right, and then they start hitting it with a Mewtwo, that's not great. So you do have that option to just go switch Shaman, and then you are back in attacking with the attacker that you want to be attacking with. There's lots of different attackers in this deck, so being able to choose your attacker based on your opponent's active is really clutch. Okay, so getting into the trainers now. I'm gonna be playing 4 Dual Ball. Dual Ball is just great for Pokemon consistency. Flip 2 coins for each head, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. So every Pokemon in the deck is a basic, so every heads you get lets you do a Pokemon search. On average, that's finding you 1 Pokemon with a Dual Ball, which is really good. But, you know, sometimes you'll get that clutch too, or if you're really lucky like me, you'll flip Double Tails a lot. Yeah, so Dual Ball is just really good for Pokemon's consistency, you know, helping with a Smiggle, Shaman, literally anything you need. Also, speaking of consistency, Junk Arm is a really great card. So it's Junk Arm says discard 2 cards from your hand, search your discard pile for a trainer card, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. You can't choose Junk Arm with the effect of this card. So being able to get a Dual Ball back, there's a ton of other like item cards or trainer cards rather that you're able to get back with Junk Arm, and it just keeps you consistent because as soon as you play one of those cards that you might have 1, 2, or 3 of in the deck, it ups your odds to like 5 or 6 in deck, right? So let's say you play 3 catchers, so let's say you play a catcher, now all of a sudden you have 2 catchers left in deck as well as 4 Junk Arm that can be live for a catcher if you need a catcher. So it just makes your deck really consistent. Junk Arm is such a good card. Just to play 4 Random Receiver. Speaking of consistency, you just need to find supporters. So Random Receiver, if you start it, it's really good. Flip cards over from the top of your deck until you find a supporter card, reveal it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. So just being able to find a supporter is great. And then as soon as, like I said, with that Junk Arm, as soon as you have a Random Receiver in the discard, all of your Junk Arms are essentially supporter searches. So being able to have a Junk Arm be an option to be a supporter is also really good, and kind of the reason you play 4. Okay, so you play 3 Pokemon Catcher as well. Pokemon Catcher is a crazy good card, probably the best item in the format. So good that it actually got errated. So Pokemon Catcher says switch your opponent's active Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. It's now on a coin flip, but crazy back in the day it was not. You can just yoink one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active, which is really good, especially when you got a Mewtwo and you can be really aggressive with Mewtwo, right? Like let's say your opponent had a pretty chill turn 1 and they just had a Mewtwo on the bench with an energy. You can just go Mewtwo, Force Breath, DCE, Pokemon Catcher plus power, and you're back in the game. And like I was saying, you know, with Junk Arm, you have multiple uses of Catcher, so you have a lot of options to be able to use that in the mid and late game as well. Okay, so you're playing 3 Switch as well. Obviously, getting your Smeargles and Celebis out of the active to attack with your Mewtwo's, Terrakions, or Tornadus is really good as well. You know, really just depends what you need. Sometimes you can get double switch off on a Celebi to get double Forest Breath, like I was saying. You can go Forest Breath, switch into another Celebi, Forest Breath again, and then switch to an attacker. Or if you have a Skyarrow, you only need 1 switch to do that. So just having 1 switch to be able to get 2 energy accelerants is really good. Because as soon as you start getting multiple attaches off with Celebi, your board state gets a little bit out of control for sure. Attaching more than 1 energy a turn is pretty good. So you also play 2 Eviolite. Eviolite is mainly just to be keeping your attackers alive. So Eviolite says as long as it's attached to a basic Pokemon, that basic Pokemon takes 20 less damage from attacks after applying weakness and resistance. So it just makes it a little bit harder to one-shot your stuff. If you have a Mewtwo EX with an Eviolite, it makes it a little bit harder to knock out with a Darkrai. The Darkrai can't just 2-shot it. It's doing 70 damage times 2 is 140, which puts it 30 short of a knockout, which is really clutch. Also good on a Terrakion in some situations, right? Like you have 130 HP, so if a Darkrai hits you with a Night Spear for 90 and then snipes your Terrakion for 30, that's usually the target they're going to go for. Let's say they knock out a Mewtwo, they know they're going to have to knock out that Terrakion. So being able to just, you know, have a couple options to knock that Terrakion out, whether either that's a plus power on a Darkrai to hit 100 after the snipe, or with a Mewtwo for a DCE. If you put an Eviolite on there, it just makes it that much more difficult for the Darkrai or Mewtwo player to be able to one-shot your Terrakion back. So Eviolite, really good card for keeping your attackers alive. You also play 2 plus power. So like I was saying earlier, plus power is super important in the Mewtwo war. So you need to have a plus power if there's only 4 energy attached to both Mewtwo. Also important for hitting over that Eviolite hurdle. You can get over that hurdle as well with some plus powers if you're in that situation as well. But honestly, just a good card because as soon as you play one, Junk Arm makes 5 alive in the deck. So just really good to keep your damage consistent. I gotta move this up because there's a ton of trainers here. Okay, there we go. Okay. So you're also going to be playing 2 Energy Search, which in a CMT deck makes a lot of sense because Celebi needs to find grass energy. And as well, you're playing 3 different energy cards. You're playing basic grass, basic fighting, and double colorless energy. Energy Search, it just keeps your Terrakions a little bit more consistent as well, right? Like as soon as you got Energy Search, Junk Arm can be Energy Search whenever you want if you have a Junk Arm in your hand. And you do need to find that fighting energy. You know, like if you have another energy, like a grass energy with a Celebi, or another energy on a different Pokemon with Celebration Wind, you still need to have that fighting. So being able to search it directly with 2 Energy Search is really solid, I think. You're also going to be playing 1 Energy Retrieval. Obviously, getting energy back is really good for Celebi, and it's just good in the deck in general, right? Like, you just have an option to take energies back. So if you're late in the game and you're like, well, I've already used all 3 of my fighting energies attacking with Mewtwo's and Terrakions, but I really need another one back, Energy Retrieval just gives you that option. And you also play 1 Lost Remover, which I really like in this deck as well. So Lost Remover says, I didn't even read Energy Retrieval. So Energy Retrieval, search your discard for 2 basic energy cards, put them in your hand. Energy Search is search your deck for an energy. Just good for basic energy stuff. And then Lost Remover is a special energy counter. So put 1 special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon into the Lost Zone. So it takes it out of play. I mean, in the discard to do the same thing because there's nothing that gets it back. But being able to remove that DC from your opponent, it kind of just removes a threat from their board, right? Like if they have a DC on a bench Mewtwo and you want to attack with Mewtwo, but you're feeling a little bit threatened, like they might just counter KO you can Lost Remover it and then not worry so much about it. And even if they do hit the DCE on the Mewtwo, it's actually kind of a big deal because let's say you got a Mewtwo in the active and then they have a Mewtwo in the active and 1 on the bench, right? So if you're able to go Lost Remover the 1 on the bench, kill the 1 in the active, now all of a sudden you're kind of in the advantage because they don't have an energy on their bench Mewtwo, so this one dies, right? And then this one comes up with no energy and now they have to go DCE plus power, and if they don't have that, then they're kind of in a really tight spot because they're not one-shotting your Mewtwo back. So being able to keep up with those Mewtwo wars is really important, and Lost Remover can be a card that just puts you 1 step ahead. Like I was saying with Junk Arm, it just makes it so you can use it at any point in the game that it's really good, especially before an N. It can be absolutely deadly because your opponent's kind of relying on that DCE they have on the board to be able to one-shot your Mewtwo back. But if they don't have that, and then they also have a hand of like 2 or 3, it can be really dicey, and they're forced to hit off the end. So really, really good at putting some late game pressure on for sure. Okay, so you play 2 Skyarrow Bridge as well. I'll put them over here. 2 Skyarrow Bridge as well, so they're just good for keeping your mobility. So Celebi has a single retreat, Smiggle has a single retreat, Shaman and Tornadus both have a single retreat as well. So the retreat cost of basic Pokemon in play is 1 colorless less. So being able to retreat your basic Pokemon for free is really clutch because you need to find that Celebi in the active or the Smiggle in the active, depending on what your board looks like. But it just keeps you mobile, just lets you attack with kind of whatever you want or use the power of whatever you want as well. Okay, so getting into some of the supporters, you're going to be playing a fat 7 supporters in this deck. So 3 Professor Juniper, discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Just a really staple supporter, so good. One of the best draw supporters Pokemon's ever printed. And then you're also playing 2 Professor Oak's New Theory. So Professor Oak's New Theory, shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards. Also a really solid supporter that most decks in this format play at least a 1 of. And then you also play 2 N. So N is a really, really good card. So each player shuffles their hand into his or her deck and then draws for their prize card. So early game, that's just good draw. And then late game, like I was saying with Lost Remover, it can be a really good disruption option against your opponent as well. Okay, so getting into the energy line now, you're going to be playing 5 grass energy, which seems a little low, but with 2 energy search and Junk Arm, I think 5 is actually pretty fine, especially with the retrieval as well. Then you're going to be playing 3 fighting energy, and again, seems low, but with the energy search and Junk Arm for Terrakion, also seems super fine. And then just because Mewtwo Wars are so important, and the decks really just, like, if you can't win Mewtwo Wars with this deck, you're not going to be having a great time if you roll up to a tournament with it, because that's kind of the only strength that it has. It's kind of a little bit advantageous in terms of Mewtwo Wars, and even then it's not like amazing, which is why I think the deck isn't as powerful as like Mewtwo Darkrai or some of the other archetypes at the top. But because of that, you do need to be able to take the counter knockout, and 4 DCE is really vital for that. Some other variants, like I know Pestilil Prism only plays 3, and I think 3 is okay in some variants, but in a CMT list, I think you really need 4 DCE, so that's why you play 4. Yeah, this has been CMT from 2012. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.